The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the tennis court, the sound of a bouncing ball echoing rhythmically against the backdrop of a clear blue sky. Thomas and his wife, Maria, had been playing tennis together since their early days of dating. It was their shared hobby, a way to unwind and connect. Lately, however, Maria had been taking extra coaching sessions, supposedly to improve her backhand. She often joked about how her coach, Adrian, was a miracle worker on the court. One Wednesday, which was usually Thomas's late workday, he decided to leave early, planning to surprise Maria with dinner after her practice. As he approached the secluded courts of their upscale neighborhood club, the scene before him was not what he had envisioned. There, under the golden hue of the fading sun, was Adrian, his hand boldly sliding under Maria's tennis skirt. The shock of it rooted Thomas to the spot. Even from a distance, he could see the flush of pleasure on Maria's face, her laughter mingling with the crisp air, as if this betrayal was nothing but a light-hearted game. Frozen, Thomas watched as Maria playfully slapped Adrian's hand away, but her smile, wide and complicit, told a different story. It wasn't just the intimacy of the gesture that shattered Thomas, it was the unmistakable glow of excitement in Maria's eyes, a look he thought was reserved only for him. After a moment suspended in disbelief, Thomas stepped forward, the gravel underfoot crunching loudly in the quiet. Maria spotted him and her expression transformed from joy to horror. "Tom! What, how long have you been?" "Long enough," Thomas managed to say, though his voice felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. The awkward silence that followed was broken by Adrian, who adjusted his cap and offered a hand, feigning ignorance to the gravity of the moment. "Thomas, good to see you here. Just helping Maria with some new techniques. She's a quick learner." The word stung, each syllable a mocking echo in Thomas's ears. He ignored Adrian's hand. "I can see that. Very hands-on training, isn't it?" Maria's face was a mix of embarrassment and fear. "Tom, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain," Thomas cut her off sharply, turning on his heel and walking away, the sound of Maria calling after him blending into the thwack of tennis balls from adjacent courts. That evening, the house felt colder, emptier. Thomas sat in the dark living room, replaying the scene over and over. It wasn't just a fling, it was a betrayal of everything they had built together. As the night deepened, so did his resolve. Maria had made her choice, and now, he would make his. The next weeks were a blur of whispered arguments and slammed doors. Divorce papers were filed, mutual friends chose sides. Thomas's revenge was not loud or violent, it was cold and calculated. He made sure the community knew of Maria's infidelity, watching as her social standings, her friendships, her world crumbled. As he signed the final divorce document, Thomas felt a hollow victory. He had won the match, but the game they played together had long since ended. Maria moved out, her once bright laughter now just an echo in the empty spaces of their home. From that day on, the tennis courts were just a reminder of a love that had once been, a game played, a match lost, and a life altered forever. Thomas spends his evenings pacing the length of his now too quiet living room, his mind racing faster than his steps. The walls, once lined with photos of happier times, seemed to mock him with memories of Maria's laughter and the life they shared. Every corner of the home they built together now feels tainted with the echo of her betrayal. 2 weeks have passed since he walked away from the tennis courts, and with each day, the sting of betrayal sharpens into a relentless ache. His friends and colleagues try to offer support, but their words are hollow, unable to bridge the chasm of his hurt. On a brisk Thursday evening, Thomas finds himself outside the club once again, not by intention but by the gravity of unresolved anger pulling him back to the scene of his heartbreak. He watches from a distance as Adrian gives lessons on the same court. His presence there, so untroubled, fuels Thomas's resolve. As Adrian's lesson ends and the student leaves, Thomas strides onto the court, his approach silent but determined. Adrian, collecting tennis balls, looks up and gives a start. "Tom. This is a surprise. Looking to hit some balls?" Adrian's attempt at casual friendliness grates on Thomas's nerves. "No, Adrian. I'm not here to play games." Thomas steps closer, his voice low and menacing. You knew she was my wife. And yet, you. Adrian holds up his hands, a feeble shield against the accusation. Look, man, I'm sorry. It was never meant to go this far. It just happened. Just happened? Thomas laughs, a harsh sound that bounces off the court walls. You think ruining a marriage just happens? You think this is some kind of accident? Adrian's gaze shifts, unable to meet Thomas's fiery eyes. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I thought. You didn't think, Adrian. That's the problem. You didn't think about me, about the consequences. You just did what you wanted. Thomas's anger boils over, his words slicing through the chilly air. But actions have consequences. And you're going to learn about those now. Adrian backs away, his earlier confidence waning as he senses the seriousness in Thomas's tone. What are you saying, Tom? What are you planning? Nothing illegal, Thomas says, his voice cold as steel. But I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you are. The club, your clients. Let's see how your business survives the truth. Adrian swallows, his face paling. You wouldn't. I would. And I will. Thomas turns to leave, his parting words a chilling promise. You've made your bed, Adrian. Now lie in it. As Thomas walks away, the weight of his words hangs heavy in the air. He doesn't feel the triumph he imagined. Instead, there's a hollow victory in setting the wheels of retribution in motion, a necessary act to salvage his dignity, if not his heart. Driving home, Thomas's thoughts drift to Maria. The pain of her betrayal mixes with a sliver of sorrow for what they had lost. But the time for mourning is past. Now is the time for action, for rebuilding from the ashes of his shattered trust. At home, he sits down at his computer, his fingers poised above the keyboard. With each click, he drafts the email that will expose the affair to the club's board. He hesitates only a moment before hitting send. It's done. There's no turning back. As the night deepens, Thomas realizes that this is just the beginning. The path of revenge is a long one, and he is ready to walk it to the end. The intrigue of what lies ahead promises more revelations and challenges, but Thomas is resolute. He will reclaim his life, piece by broken piece. The next morning, the air is crisp with the onset of autumn, and Thomas feels the change not just in the weather but within himself. His actions from the previous evening hang over him like the cool fog that blankets the early hours. He knows that his email to the club's board has ignited the fuse of a scandal that will soon explode. He waits, a tight knot of anticipation and dread tightening in his stomach. It doesn't take long. By mid-morning, his phone buzzes relentlessly. Calls and messages flood in, a mixture of support and condemnation. Thomas sifts through them, his resolve hardening with each swipe. Among the flurry, one message stands out, it's from Maria. Her name on the screen sends a jolt through him, a painful reminder of her betrayal. He hesitates for a moment before opening it. Tom, we need to talk. Please. It's important. For opening it. Impulse is to delete the message, to cut off all communication. But curiosity and a lingering ache for closure hold his finger still. He types a curt reply, setting a time and place. A public cafe downtown, neutral ground. He won't allow her the comfort of a private reconciliation. The cafe is bustling with the midday crowd when Maria arrives. She spots him immediately, her eyes searching his face for signs of the man she once knew. Thomas looks up, his expression unreadable. Maria takes a seat across from him, her hands nervously twisting a napkin. Tom, I'm so sorry you found out that way. I never wanted to hurt you. Thomas's voice is steady, his anger a controlled burn. But you did, Maria. You did hurt me. Why? Maria sighs, a tear escaping down her cheek. I was lonely, Tom. You were always working, we never spent time like we used to. Adrian was there, and it felt nice to be noticed. Thomas's heart clenches at her words, but his voice remains firm. Being lonely is no excuse for betrayal. I know, she whispers. I know I made a terrible mistake. And I'll regret it forever. What are you going to do now? Thomas leans back, his eyes cold. I've already started. The club knows. Everyone will know. It's only fair, isn't it? For everyone to see who you really are? Maria's face crumples, her composure breaking. Tom, please, isn't there a way we can? There's no we anymore, Maria. You made sure of that. They sit in silence, the distance between them more profound than ever. Finally, Maria stands, her figure deflated, her spirit broken. I really am sorry, Tom. He watches her leave, her shoulders hunched, a shadow of the vibrant woman she once was. But there's no satisfaction in her defeat, only a hollow victory. Thomas spends the rest of the day in a daze. His actions have set a chain of events in motion that cannot be undone. He receives a call from the club president later that afternoon, informing him that Adrian has been suspended pending an investigation. The reality of his influence hits him hard. He's wielded his hurt as a weapon, and now he must live with the consequences. That night, as he lies in bed staring at the ceiling, Thomas wonders about the cost of his revenge. He's begun to unravel the threads of Maria's life, but at what expense to his own soul? The path ahead is unclear, the endgame murky. As he drifts into a restless sleep, he realizes that the journey of retribution is far from over. The intrigue of what lies ahead promises more twists and turns, but Thomas is now uncertain if the final revelation will bring him peace or further turmoil. As autumn deepens, the trees lining the streets of Thomas's neighborhood shed their leaves in a fiery cascade, mirroring the scorched earth path of his revenge. The days have grown shorter, and with them, the shadows in Thomas's heart have lengthened, darkening with the weight of his actions. Adrian's career is now in ruins, and Maria has become a pariah in their social circles. Thomas's decisive actions have left their lives shattered, yet the hollow feeling inside him only grows. One chilly evening, Thomas sits alone in his dimly lit study, the silence oppressive, broken only by the soft ticking of the clock. He pores over the latest messages and emails, more fallout from his revelations, more people taking sides. His phone buzzes, an unknown number flashing on the screen. Curiosity piqued, he answers. Mr. Thomas? This is Detective Larson. I'm calling about Adrian Turner. There's been an incident. Thomas stiffens, his voice tight. What kind of incident? It appears to be a suicide, sir. He was found in his apartment this morning. The news strikes Thomas like a physical blow. Despite his anger and hurt, the reality of such a tragic end shakes him to his core. Guilt surges through his veins, cold and unforgiving. Why are you telling me this? Thomas manages to ask, his voice hoarse. Your name came up in our initial investigation. Mr. Turner left a note mentioning some personal troubles linked to the recent events at the tennis club. Thomas hangs up the phone, his hand trembling. The room spins around him as he realizes the full extent of his vengeance. He had wanted to make Adrian pay, to make him feel a fraction of the pain he had inflicted. But not this. Never this. Days turn into weeks, and the weight of Adrian's death casts a long shadow over Thomas. He attends the funeral, a silent observer in the back, watching as Adrian's family mourns a life cut tragically short. No one knows of his role in the unraveling of Adrian's life, but the burden of his secret is a heavy chain around his neck. One cold evening, Thomas finds himself outside Maria's new apartment, the need to see her, to explain, overwhelming. He watches from across the street as she returns home, her steps slow and weary. Gathering his courage, he crosses the street and calls out to her. Maria! She turns, her face pale, her eyes wide with surprise. Tom? What are you doing here? I heard about Adrian, he begins, the words heavy on his tongue. I never wanted things to go this far. I'm sorry. Maria looks at him, her expression unreadable. You're sorry? Do you have any idea what your revenge has done? Not just to me or to Adrian, but to everyone around us. You let your pain consume you, Tom, and it destroyed everything. Thomas reaches out, his voice desperate. "Maria, No, Tom." Maria steps back, her voice breaking. "It's too late. What's done is done. You chose your path." With those final words, she turns and walks away, disappearing into the building. Thomas stands there, the cold biting through his coat, his heart leaden. He walks back home, the streets empty and silent around him. The realization that his quest for revenge has led to nothing but tragedy and isolation is a bitter pill to swallow. He has lost his wife, contributed to a man's death, and in his pursuit of retribution, he has lost himself. Back in his home, Thomas sits in the dark, the ticking of the clock now a somber reminder of time's passage. He knows that the pain of betrayal may never fully leave him, but the cost of his vengeance has been too high. He resolves to live the rest of his days carrying the weight of his actions, a solitary figure marked by the consequences of a revenge too cruel, too treacherous, and ultimately, too ruthless.